Questions that we have to ask ourselves in the 21st century. First and foremost, is Skynet inevitable? Is swiping right halal or kosher? If the singularity gains power, will it demand monotheism or will it be a polytheist? These are the questions we have to ask because tech is now part and parcel not just of our life and our everyday life, but also part of our spirituality and the way we are creating communities. It might seem that this is just for the kids, but oh no, it is shaping Silicon Valley. And Peter Thiel just did a 4-part series on the Antichrist. Can't make this stuff up. This is where we are. Tech is reshaping belief, it's reshaping community, it is reshaping meaning for young people in campus and beyond. And there is a person who wrote a book about this phenomenon, predicting it, and he is here. We have Greg Epstein, Humanist Chaplain at Harvard and MIT, in conversation. Wait for it, with our co-MC, because they're making her do freaking everything. Naila and Greg Epstein, give them a round of applause. They're going to be talking about tech and how it impacts faith, community, and the youth.
You go first,
And I agree, the children of immigrants called on to do everything, right?
Greg, thanks for being here.
Delighted to be here. Wanted to be speaking at a gathering like this while I was writing this book.
And I feel like we're trying to bust the algorithm with everything we're talking about this morning. So I really do want to get straight into it with you about what you've written about if technology does indeed take us to a promised land and modern day crusades as well as the Reformation you were waiting for.
Yeah.
So can I start by just reading something that you wrote? Sure. And this is in Tech Agnostic, which I will say you can get for free in the library. But I bet Greg would prefer if you want to buy copies for other people too. You should. You wrote, for as long as humans have done much of anything, we have been, as Princeton religion scholar Robert Orsi puts it, in relationship with gods, angels, devils, spirits, or whatever supernatural beings have been most predominantly imagined at a given time and place. So I wanted to start by asking you how we've turned our technological lives and technology into the realm of religion.
Technological, yeah. Well, look, I'm surprised, at least based on the context of several years ago, I'm surprised to be here talking about this, right? Mm-hmm. I've been spending the last 20 plus years as the Humanist Chaplain at Harvard. So chaplain for atheists, agnostics, and the non-religious. I spent, of that time, about 10 years working, sometimes I would even count, masochistically, like 80 hours a week, running or starting this congregation that was meant to be sort of an alternative to traditional religious congregations. The dream was, why can't atheists and agnostics have spaces like this one, right? Where we could get together any given day and have a real meaningful community as humanists. The idea essentially was to give people the power to build community and bring the world closer together. But that's not the language that I used, or that's not my phrasing. That's actually Mark Zuckerberg's phrasing from 2017.
Right.
Rewrites the Facebook mission statement as I'm sort of almost 10 years down the line of this congregation. Facebook, now Meta, had come out with this new way to phrase what they were trying to do. And at that point, I had been sort of struggling with why is this congregation thing so hard, even though it had been my dream for many years to build it. And I hear Zuckerberg, and I think, oh, wait a second. That's what I've been trying to do, to build a secular form of community that brings people together, right? No wonder it's been so hard. In the past, this is 2017, 2018, so think about the decade before that. They already did it, right? Zuckerberg, Meta, Facebook, all of these, but all the other social, they had created a kind of alternative community that looked, from an anthropological or sociological perspective, extraordinarily religious. It looked like a congregation, or like the congregation that I'd been thinking maybe people needed. Then the question was, oh, wait a second. Like, if the congregation, which I had been taught, was essentially, and I think this phrase had even been used in some of the rooms that I studied to be a humanist chaplain, the most powerful social technology ever created. Was that even true anymore in 2018? Is it even true now? If you sit in a grand room like this one, it feels pretty true. I mean, this is a pretty grand form of social technology. We're at the foot of what we now call Ground Zero in the Freedom Tower. I went to high school right around here. I'm taken by the grandness of this environment and the moment, but really, is the most powerful social technology still rooms like this and buildings like that one, or is it this multi-trillion-dollar interconnected web that has dominated our lives these last several years? I as a chaplain at Harvard and MIT.
Yeah, so I was wondering, how have you seen this? How have you seen this among the students?
Chaplain at Harvard and MIT, right? So I have these almost 50 colleagues as chaplains at Harvard. My Zoroastrian friend Dariush, chaplain colleague Dariush likes to joke that we go from the atheist to the Zoroastrian, right? And there's about 30, 35 of us at MIT as well. And I say to them, because we're all trying to figure out what to do with our students, how to bring meaning. I wrote in my first book, Good Without God, about how building humanist community is like herding cats. But every single one of these chaplains pretty much will talk about herding cats and how it's challenging to be a community builder, right? And so I say to these chaplains, like, what do you think is really more powerful these days? What you do? What I do? Or the tech? And I think the tech has become more powerful than what all of us chaplains and maybe all of us religious professionals in this room do combined. And so, I wasn't the first person to notice that tech can now be compared to religion. There were some really great books and articles about this in the 80s and 90s, actually. Where the great social critic Neil Postman wrote a whole book that was listed by Vox as the second best tech book of all time, called Technopoly, in which he complains that his fax machine had become like a religion. My innovation on this, though, is that it's now like Constantine took Christianity from a small religion to the conquering force around the world that we've known it as since. It's now the most powerful religion in the world. And, I started making a list for myself of, like, where else can you compare tech and religion? Are there other forms of comparison? And I got theology, the theological symbols of the tech religion, the way that you've got your crucifix and your Star of David and your crescent and your wheel of Dharma. It's the invisible hand of the marketplace, one of the most spiritual symbols you'll ever see. And it's the hockey stick graph that says that if you simply apply enough technology, enough algorithms, enough AI, whatever, your profits will ascend infinitely higher. And so, I started exploring this, and I didn't want to just sort of like pontificate about it. So I spent about 5 years, from 2018-19 to last year when the book came out, kind of diving into this world. That I spent time with, CEOs and engineers and venture capitalists, but also in the Silicon Valley milieu, social workers, therapists, pastors, chaplains, protesters, gig workers, really wanting to ask the question, how is this functioning in the same way that many of our religions do or sort of purport to, which is like providing us with a sense of structure, of meaning, of ritual. We genuflect before our stained glass Black Mirror altars hundreds of times a day now, right? And where is that taking us as a human community?
So I definitely want to get to where that's taking us. But first, I just want to go back to this idea of you spending all of this time with people. We've been joking about Peter Thiel and the Antichrist, but like we have very vivid examples. And I wonder how else you can talk very specifically about this religious fervor expressed specifically by tech executives and specifically now around generative AI.
Yeah, I mean, Thiel's purported Christianity. I have echoes of my friend and hero, or at least I wouldn't call us friends, but he's definitely a hero that I've gotten to work with a couple times. Eddie Glaude saying, "You're lying," in my head as we talk about Peter Thiel. I'll leave it at that, right? But I guess. What should we say about Peter Thiel? I mean,
what do you want to say about Peter Thiel?
I guess what I want to say, so here's somebody who he has this article from the Financial Times, I believe, where he talks about the Antichrist and the apocalypse, right? And he says Donald Trump is the harbinger, essentially, of the tech apocalypse, but in a good way. Is Peter Thiel's message as he's written in Financial Times, and then he gave the 4 speeches. I guess one for each, apostle or something. What's that?
Horsemen.
4 horsemen. Sorry about that. Yeah. Sorry, atheist. I might slip up on my theology sometimes. But I did go to divinity school and really loved it. But I might slip up sometimes. So Thiel is essentially saying, and Peter Thiel is the mentor to Vice President J.D. Vance, most likely the person who sort of selected J.D. Vance to become now our vice president. Thiel is essentially saying that the Antichrist is the person or people who are there to stop the profusion of AI across every aspect of society, right? So you've got this new phenomenon of AI, this idea of trillions of dollars that are going to be invested in this new form of technology, or purportedly new form of technology. And Thiel, what he's really saying, the heart of it, he says on his the website for Founders Fund, his multi-billion-dollar venture capital firm, they talk about how to be a successful Silicon Valley entrepreneur, you actually have to have a near messianic personality, right? But what the idea of the apocalypse and the Antichrist, as he's getting at it, it's really all about how don't stop us from spreading this technology, trillions and trillions of dollars worth of it, all over the world, so that it can become the dominant force in the world.
So I feel like that's a very vivid example. One of the things I find so interesting as you delve into this world is there have been, we joke about this, but there have actually been people who have talked about divinity within AI and formed religious organizations around that, or quasi. I don't know if you want to say if they're actual religious, how you would define that.
So the idea here is, in writing Tech Agnostic, I ended up figuring out, for myself anyway, that you could make a strong comparison between a number of different aspects of religion and a number of different aspects of the tech world. being at Harvard and MIT at these past couple decades, a lot of the tech was being designed around that world, and so got to know a lot of the tech leaders and such. And as I was studying religion and building this alternative form, there's just these great comparisons to be made. And so, made a few of them just now, but I'll say that in the book, each chapter compares a different aspect of tech to a different aspect of religion, and the chapter on AI is the chapter on doctrine, because there's all these doctrines in the world of AI, but it's really essentially a chapter that asks the question, how do you know if a messianic figure is true or not? So the chapter begins and ends with the story of Shabtai Tzvi. And, if there are rabbis in the room or such, you'll know who I'm talking about. The most accomplished, I suppose, false messiah of the common era. Between Jesus and now, this guy was somebody who got the majority of the world's Jews, not just to believe in him, but for a year or two there, around the world, Jews were actually, the majority of them were actually feasting on Yom Kippur instead of fasting, the holiest day of the year, because he'd come. And then the Sultan finds out that he's saying so, and the Sultan's not happy about that, because can't be a Messiah on my watch, right? Unless I control you. And so he said to Shabtai Tzvi, you're going to convert or you're going to die. And Shabtai Tzvi converted, and he spent the rest of his life as basically a door opener or whatever for one of the Sultan's friends. And so the question is about AI. We're told that it's going to essentially eliminate death, be a kind of God. There are so many comparisons between AI and God that I had to pay at one point in the book, in this chapter, to reprint a chart by Max Tegmark from his book Life 3.0, a famous AI philosopher, I guess, the chart is not whether we should build an AI God, it's which type of AI God should we build. And so, how do you know that this God is real? How do you know that this God is just? And that's a question that religious people have had to be asking for millennia. But now, here we are, we're awaiting this thing, right? The questions in the AI world have been for many years now all about, when will the singularity arrive? When will it arrive? When will it arrive and change all of our lives? And so Ray Kurzweil, the great AI theorist and singularitarian, singularity is, you can think of it as the dawning of the AI messianic era. He says in his book Singularity Now that when the AI singularity arrives, that life will finally be meaningful. Think about that in this room, right? I said to Ray when I met him several months ago, he's the guy, one of these guys, I guess one of these guys now, who takes like 200 pills a day to try to preserve his youth, sorta. So that he can be
so
still
he can be alive for the singularity.
Alive and fertile, I guess, when his head can be sawed off and plopped into a computer of some sort. Anyway, so I said to him, doesn't that sort of fly in the face of thousands of years of both religious and secular philosophy to say that life will be meaningful finally when AI arrives? And he looks at me for a minute in his yellow suspenders and he says, well, I guess life's been somewhat meaningful up until now, but life will be much more meaningful then, right? And so, although the book goes through these comparisons and ends with the Reformation, I guess the thing to me is if I'd had a couple more years to keep writing, the comparison that I'd be making about AI now is that the new religious metaphor is, this is kind of the crusade. Mm-hmm. This is the holy war, where trillions of dollars are being marshaled to dominate the world, to colonize everything. Every industry, every religion, every conference, every news organization, every relationship, every one of our inner thoughts, they're all being colonized The AI targeting system for the Israeli government that targeted the buildings that were all destroyed in the Gaza Strip is called Habsorah, the gospel. Okay? Holy war. That's where we're at.
So if that's where we're at, right, if we're at holy war, what do you want people in this room, in the realm of, from the realm of religion or media or philanthropy, what do you want them to be thinking about or speaking about?
Yeah, so, right, where are we headed with all of this, right? Are we going to get to AI heaven? Are we going to go to AI hell? Which, by the way, the AI hell stuff, they're called doomers, the AI hell theorists. Geoffrey Hinton, 2 years ago, the Nobel laureate physicist, even though he's not actually a physicist, but I digress, is one of the doomers. He said that our P-doom, which means our probability that we believe that AI will destroy all of human life in the coming 100 years, in this century. He said right after winning the Nobel Prize that it should be raised from 10 to 20%. Because, of course, he studied that, right? He knew the objective number now, right? Because he won the Nobel Prize. And so, in the midst of that, will we go to heaven? Will we go to hell? I think, we're stuck in purgatory for a while. And how do we get out of it? I think we need to recognize that all of this doubling and tripling and trillioning down on technology has, and I'm not anti-technology. I have no desire to sail the Atlantic on wooden boards or whatever. But the over-focus on technology, the obsession with technology as the purpose of life rather than as a tool to improve our lives, has gotten us to a place that's really, deeply disturbing. There are now 88 democracies and 91 autocracies in the world. You see what I'm saying? That's where this has taken us. I like this one. That there's varieties of democracy report of 2025. Studied 31 million data points from 202 countries, 1789 to 2024, 4,200 scholars. The world has fewer democracies than autocracies now. 3/4 of the people on Earth, 72%, live in autocracies now. In this technological era, which is saving us, right? Saving us. So, life expectancy has declined. The biggest share of our GDP growth last year was for computer equipment. Okay, so other than that kind of spending, we're actually in a recession now, and for young adults, we're in a depression. We're actually in a real depression, economically speaking, for young adults. And so, I guess what I want to say about that, we really need to take a look at that and ask ourselves. And I think the reason I'm so glad to be here is because the people in this room are really uniquely qualified to understand, and I would like to think, to do something about the fact that we've gone astray. We have invested the very best and biggest of our capacities as human beings, not into ourselves, not into one another, not into caring, not into compassion, not into nurturing. We've invested it in tech.
So do you think, is that it? Like, is that what you want this room to is that your advice to this room as you think about what you're investing in? Is it about sort of like this idea of empathy and community, but not in the way that we've been talking about?
So
I know it's not a simple question. It's not there's a
no,
simple
I mean
answer,
it's so. This is what I've been really thinking about, and I wanted to spend the majority of the time, even in a room like this, on sort of like laying out the problem, because it's such a severe problem, and even though actually like there's a lot of good to be seen in rooms like this and what they represent, and I mean, think about it, like. We're here for a group of people who are devoted either to documenting huge changes in the world so that it can be, so they can be seen and understood, or people who really are taking on the mantle of spiritual, moral, ethical leadership and committing your lives to it. So I think it's really that's very powerful. And what I wanted to do is sort of lay out the problem that as I see it to people like that, and then say, what do we do from the perspective of the book, Tech Agnostic has gotten a lot of discussions going in the tech world. Well, I mean, I'm hearing from people all the time, right? But it didn't really permeate the religious world very much. And I'm trying to figure out what to make of that. And what I wanted to do was, and luckily, like the Omidyar network, which is a tech philanthropy started by Pierre Omidyar, the founder of eBay, who's really worried about what his fellow Silicon Valley billionaires have done. I got some funding to convene dialogues between prominent religious, spiritual, and ethical leaders on where we're headed with all this. What's the future of our of our society, given this role that tech is playing? And I've gotten to speak with dozens and dozens so far in this project of religious, spiritual, ethical leader communities from Christianity of all kinds, Judaism, Hinduism, Buddhism, but also Taoist and Confucian communities, indigenous communities, et cetera. And so I guess what I want to say is that the conclusion that I've been hearing from a lot of the leaders and communities that I've been speaking with is that our obsession with tech it's causing a humanity deficit. Tech is currently being driven by many things, but I'm not sure humanity, as I see it or as you may see it from your different, but I respect very much religious perspective, differently and similarly, I'm not sure humanity is even on the list of reasons why we're creating the technology that we're creating for the most part right now, or at least in very large and influential part.
So I think we have time for hopefully one quick question. There's probably a lot more questions. Oh, yeah.
Yes.
I'm the lucky one.
You're lucky. You have to make it really.
Hi. Oh, okay. Oh, sorry. I don't know if it's on.
Yep, it's on.
Thank you. I'm super curious about your role as a chaplain with all of these people at MIT and Harvard who are building this stuff, who's working on the tech. And I think that at least my experience in Silicon Valley and Harvard and places like that have been that people can do good and do well. There's a huge financial motive, and they also feel that they can save the world. So I'm curious, how do you advise and counsel your students who are, adopting this ethos of I want to make bank, but I'm also going to save lots of people?
Yeah, I'm really worried about it.
Can you make bank and do good?
I mean, when in doubt, the answer is going to be no. If you find something that where you really seem confident after a lot of self-doubt and self-criticism, which is a good and healthy thing to do, right? Self-doubt and self-criticism. I'm talking about in the book, ultimately, agnosticism. We need more agnosticism. Love, love, love to Eddie Glaude out there. I wrote about you during the pandemic as a hero of sort of faith in humanity. But where one thing I disagree is, the Trump voters, many of them, they're so afraid. They're so afraid of the amount of change that we're experiencing. We're being told that climate change on the one hand is going to wash away everything that we have and everything that we are. And we're also told at the same time that the AI tech is going to build a Tower of Babel that's going to change everything that we are and everything that we have. And people are so afraid by that level of change. Our values are changing, our religions are changing, that it can be comforting for people to turn to somebody who seems completely certain in the face of that change. I think a lot of that certainty is basically just sociopathy, right? But it is comforting to turn to certainty in the face of radical uncertainty to the degree that we've never had before.
So I know we're pretty much out of time, but just to that question though, do you think that you see with your students that they apply that same level of certainty and tell themselves that they're doing good while they're making money?
Yeah, so I could talk all day about the students, but basically the students, they'll tend to tell themselves like, oh, it's going to be okay in my life because I'm getting this training. But then, we've seen the majority of students I've been working with the last year are international. That's not working out that well. And so there is a crisis of confidence right now, even for students like mine. And they're kind of casting about like, what am I supposed to dedicate myself to, if not to this, idea of doing well, while doing good. And I think, it's going to be something like we're going to have to sacrifice for one another. We're going to have to try harder, invest more in seeing one another's humanity, and affirming it rather than affirming the tech. And we're going to have to sort of get ourselves away from some of the tech in order to do that. I do see more and more students who are interested in that, but there's a conflict brewing. And I think we're going to need to really support the people on the side of willingness to step back from the tech and step back from the trillions of dollars of investment brinkmanship in order to affirm humanity. They're going to need our support.
Greg Epstein, thank you.
Thank you.